This vodcast is going to be looking at an article by Heidi Andrade, Joanna Heffron and Maria Palmer entitled Formative Assessment in the Visual Arts, published in 2014, and will address the design and use of meaningful feedback in the visual arts Stage 6 classroom. The details are here on the screen if you're interested in looking up the article when we're finished. This article focuses upon the implementation of formative assessment in the visual arts classroom, refuting the idea that the arts cannot be assessed, and furthermore, we should not assess children's art because in doing so, it may threaten students' self-esteem and diminish their motivation to engage in art making. The article reports on a study aimed to educate visual arts teachers about the power and benefit of informal, ongoing formative feedback, and then examines the common findings from two separate schools as case studies, as the teachers proactively implemented formative feedback in their classrooms. Initially, teachers were reluctant to implement formative feedback in their classrooms, becoming confused as to the difference between assessment and evaluation. The study aimed to educate these teachers, providing evidence that such informal, formative feedback would deepen student understanding of both concept and skills, and that their students would benefit being taught the simple ability to 1. Understand the targets and goals for their learning, 2. Identify the gap between those goals and their current state, and 3. Know how to close the gap through relearning and revision. The article then presented the findings from 2 of 96 schools that participated in the study, examining the techniques used and the effectiveness of these tactics. In the first school studied, the teachers, after noticing students struggling with a new technique, compiled a set of 4 possible images displaying that technique. The students were then asked to label each car 1 to 4, 1 being the most basic and 4 displaying the most sophisticated use of that technique. The students were then asked to create a rubric based upon their observations of that use of technique in each of the 4 cars, and then using that rubric to assess their own work, suggesting improvements where necessary. In this case, the students provided their own feedback, which was then cross-referenced by the teacher, who was then able to give feedback upon both the original drawing, the rubric made by students, and then the new drawing that was done based upon their rubric. In the second school, the teacher, whilst teaching a printmaking class, created an oops board, upon which students were encouraged to progressively place their prints that they felt either didn't work, accompanied by a brief comment explaining what they thought went wrong, or prints that were a result of happy accidents. Students were encouraged to place multiples of the same print on the board to show their progress and resolutions. The board is displayed above, and it can be seen that it was really embraced by the students. In this instance, both the teacher and students provided one another with feedback, actively inviting comment. The teacher reported that she'd never seen them write so much, and that they became increasingly confident in their work, offering advice and feedback to one another unprompted. The article then suggested that overall, after implementing informal, ongoing feedback, teachers from the 96 schools studied collectively reported an improvement in student engagement, the quality of their art making, and an embracement of formative assessment. Based upon this article, I've developed 4 strategies by which to design and implement informal, formative feedback into the Stage 6 visual arts classroom, including firstly, goal setting, process diaries, peer feedback, and checkups. These strategies are designed to include both art making and art theory practices, to include elements of collaborative learning and the incorporation of ICT to extend student learning and encourage critical thinking. These strategies have also been designed to incorporate multiple learning styles and to differentiate between individual learners and learning paces, allowing the teacher to view each student as unique, as well as one of a cohort. The first strategy that I'd suggest stems directly from the article and is the setting of individual goals. I'd allow students to select their own goals at the beginning of a task, including both art making and art theoretical tasks, and using a pre-made performer to structure their responses, discuss these goals with them, giving the students individualized feedback and suggestions. This could be of particular benefit to HSC students, for to do so would be to provide the students with a tangible and feasible starting point and a clear time frame. For the stronger and more proactive students, such a task would encourage critical thinking about their skills and particular work processes. For the weaker or less motivated students, such a process will encourage accountability. This is a simple way to engage differentiation in the visual arts classroom, so that all students are working towards goals suited to their particular ability and pace of learning, and thus will be better enabled to achieve that goal. Systematically, over the term or task duration, I'd meet with the students, asking them to reflect on their process, asking them to assess where they are in relation to the goals that they'd set, giving them an opportunity to reflect upon their work and to form their own personal feedback. Such a meeting would be designed to allow the teacher to both formatively assess student learning and then to provide individualized, formative feedback, affirming and/or correcting a student when necessary. Students would be asked to suggest possible strategies to help them close the gap between their current position and their goal. These would then be discussed, along with strategies for implementation. This is a simple way to encourage the students to be critical of their work and process, as well as engaging them in the learning process. The syllabus requires that students develop a capacity to manage their own learning, becoming critically aware. Such skills will assist students beyond school and into the workplace. In learning how to set, assess, and achieve goals, students will be better equipped to both enter university, TAFE, and the workforce, for such skills are valuable in day-to-day life. A second strategy I'd implement is the proactive use of process diaries. I know that at school my process diary was only ever looked at as a form of summative assessment, and that in the interim, I'd be inclined to neglect it or put things in it that didn't need to be there. If, however, the process diary could be designed to become a weekly or fortnightly source of discussion between teacher and student or student and student, informal, regular formative feedback could easily and effectively be instituted into classroom life. Students would be encouraged to photograph or document each work in various stages of completion that they complete over a set period, along with a brief reflection on how they felt that they had improved over the task or where they needed to change, giving them the opportunity to provide themselves with their own personal feedback, encouraging them to be reflective in their art-making practices. The teacher can then easily observe student progress and weekly provide relevant, personalised feedback, allowing for differentiation and the assessing of student goals. At the end of the task, the diary can then be used to form a component of a summative assessment. The syllabus requires that the process diary ought to be used as a means of developing students' understanding and judgment. In using the diary as a tool for formative feedback, it allows the student and teacher to maximise its potential. The third strategy I'd use to implement formative feedback in the Stage 6 Visual Arts classroom is to provide an opportunity for both formal and informal peer feedback. This may include asking students to mark and then provide feedback on another's essay or response as a first draft before handing it in for marking. It may include stopping in the middle of an art-making class and turning to the peers either side of themselves, providing feedback upon each other's works, what was working and what wasn't. Another strategy to facilitate peer feedback is blogging. Blogging is also an easy way to incorporate the ICT key capability into the classroom and to encourage collaborative learning. Tumblr is a current free blogging tool that could be used. Students may be required to keep a fortnightly blog, documenting their progress and any changes they may have faced, posting images of their work. Students may then be required to comment on two peers' blogs, offering encouragement and one piece of critical feedback. Students would be required to comment on a different blog each fortnight. This is a simple way to encourage collaborative learning, engage students who are digitally minded, assist those who struggle with writing, and provide fortnightly, informal feedback for all students. Above are stills from a blog that I kept as a process diary using Tumblr. It was very easy to use and very effective. The aim of the Stage 6 Visual Arts syllabus is that students are enabled to understand how the field of visual arts is subject to different interpretations. Peer feedback will assist students in understanding this. It will also facilitate collaborative learning in an art-making and art criticism field, allowing the more capable students to broaden their notion of art-making and encourage the weaker students, improving their work. It will also connect students to the art world, in which works are critiqued all the time, creating a necessary relevance for them. I'd also institute a system of checkups to assist in the implementation of informal, ongoing, formative feedback. These checkups will allow the teacher to observe student work and process on a regular basis, and will give the student an opportunity to individually discuss work with the teacher, seeking advice where needed. These checkups may take the form of a monthly interview or a weekly examination of a student's process diary or blog. If desiring to involve the class, the teacher may implement a show and tell format, in which students show a particular artwork to the class, critiquing what they liked or didn't like, and then giving time for the class to provide feedback back to the student. It may also include the in-class chat in which a teacher and student spontaneously discuss the work, providing on-the-minute feedback for the student when they need it. In undertaking this task, I've realised the importance of professional research. It opens your eyes to the possibilities available to you as a teacher and gives you a tangible reason to update your skills and challenge your notions of key concepts. If I choose not to pursue professional reading and development, I'll never move past my preconceived notions and will limit my capacity to teach efficiently and effectively. Feedback is such a key to good student-teacher relationships and to the continual improvement of student performance. But if I teach according to how I was taught and never challenge this by undertaking professional reading, my capacity to design and use feedback effectively will be limited. I've realised that it's not for myself that I undertake professional reading, but for my students. Simply put, it's the case of you don't know what you don't know. Professional research puts you in the know, and that's where I need to be as a 21st century teacher. I faced a number of challenges in undertaking this task. Firstly, finding the article was reasonably difficult as there seems to be an apparent lack of research concerning visual arts education. I also found that the article focused solely upon art-making practices, as opposed to both art-making and art theoretical practices. Because of this, I initially neglected formative feedback in art theory when designing my strategies. Finally, I also found that after reading the article, I developed the idea that formative feedback was more important and more effective than summative. Upon reflection, however, I've realized that both have their place, and that you can't exclude one from the classroom and focus solely upon the other, as to do so would be to disadvantage students. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast, and I hope you find a few things in there to help you in implementing formative feedback in your classroom. Bye!